Tight ankles suck. They limit your squat depth and they cause all sorts of aches, pains and imbalances. They affect your everyday life. They affect your training in the gym. Here's 3 of my favorite exercises that I personally think are the best for improving your dorsiflexion and plantar flexion. 2 things that most people tend to ignore. Let's get on with it. The only piece of kit you'll need is a resistance band. The first exercise that we're going to do is called banded ankle mobilizations. Now what you need to do is take your resistance band and you're going to loop it around a fixed surface, a squat rack, a fence, something that you can't knock over or move easily. To do this exercise, what we're going to do is take the band and create a loop. Place one leg in it, and you want to position the band just above the joint on the front of your foot. So the band will be trailing behind you. You're facing away from the stand that the band's fixed to. Now you're going to place your foot so far away from the band that you can feel the tension. The band wants to pull your leg backwards. You position the band here, it's just above what's called the talus bone. The talus bone is a very small bone that sits deep inside the joint of your ankle. This band creates what's called distraction tension. It's applying tension to the talus bone and pulling it slightly backwards. This is going to allow you to mobilize the joint better to improve your dorsiflexion. Dorsiflexion is decreasing the angle of the joint here. So basically bringing your toes closer to your shin. This will create a stretch at the back of the leg and your Achilles and calf muscle or gastrocnemius. Now you have this anti-pressure or distraction tension pulled backwards on the talus bone. Just push your heel down into the floor, and your objective here is to try and get your knee as far over your toes as possible without the heel lifting off the floor. So press into the floor. You're going to drop the knee as far forwards as it can. This band creates anti-tension or distraction tension, pulling the bone back to allow better or improved mobilization of the joint. Now your objective here is to drop forwards and then move back. We're going to do 10 to 15 repetitions on each leg, once or twice before or after you train. In terms of positioning for the band, you don't want the band too high up so it sits on the shin bone. This is not applying that distraction tension to your talus bone. This is now on the shin, so you want to make sure that it's just above the joint itself. You'll feel your ankles either side. The band should rest just above that. Now for the next one, you need a wall and a floor. The plate is optional. We'll get onto this in a minute. This is called knee to wall. You want to place your foot flat on the floor, a couple inches away from the floor. Now guys, be realistic about what an inch is. We're not measuring dick sizes. So foot flat on the floor, keep your heel planted. If you want, you can get rid of your shoe so you can actually see how your foot looks on the floor. Sometimes shoes have a spongy heel, can give you a false sense of flexion. So get your shoes to fuck. Foot flat, a couple inches away from the floor, you're going to sit up onto your knee like this. Now you want to press your heel into the floor. Don't let your heel lift. And the objective here is to drop your knee forwards until it can touch the wall. The further forwards or the further over the toes your knee can travel while keeping your foot flat to the floor will increase the stretch. Further away from the wall, you can have your foot with your knee on the wall. Can I do it? Can I do it? Come on, come on. The heel's just lifting. This is all right though, I'm happy with this. If you can drop the knee closer and closer to the wall without much resistance here, that means that your dorsiflexion is improving. Now, enter the plate. Let's say you get to a point where you're quite far away from the wall and you've got as much range of motion as you can. How do you improve that? You can then take a plate and pop the plate in front of the wall. This is going to now put your toes higher than your heels as you press that into the floor and try and drop the knee forward. This increases tension and increases the stretch. This can further develop and further improve your dorsiflexion and plantar flexion, thus letting you get deeper into squats with less tightness on the ankles. This exercise is also a very good way to measure and track the progress of your improved mobility and flexibility, because if you start off here and your knee can't get further over your toes without the heel popping up off the floor, you have a big tightness here. But as the weeks go by, if you can keep your foot flat to the floor and you can bring your knee right down to the wall and tap it without your heel lifting, well, that's progress, isn't it? And that's trackable and measurable. Trackable is a word, right? What I would recommend doing is right before you squat, you drop that forwards and you're pushing your toes into the floor and you're getting your weight right down on top of your leg and you're really driving your foot into the floor. If you hold this deep stretch for 30 seconds on each leg before you squat, that will temporarily improve your mobility for that session. And if you do that consistently over time, it improves your mobility overall. If you want, put the plate down, drop the heels forward, apply weight to that 30-second deep stretch right before you squat. Your squats will be magnificent. You may or may not have noticed that every single time I move on to a new exercise, the color's changed. What color should we do next? We haven't done red yet. Pink. Let's do pink for the next one. Now this next exercise, I don't really know the name for it, to be honest with you. I just call it the rocking ankles exercise. Not rocking ankles as in your ankles have just become fans of AC/DC or something. Dad jokes aside, let's get on with it. There's tons of different variations of this you can do. It's about finding the one that hits your ankles the best. Start off here. Toes pressed into the floor. Even here, some people might feel a stretch in the bottom of the foot, maybe in the ankle, up your calves. You want to avoid your heels tipping out. You also want to avoid your heels tipping in. You're trying to get feet flat, ankles pointing straight up, so you can sit back onto the heels. Toes pressed into the floor, you may feel a stretch here. If you don't feel a stretch in this position, the good news is you're not that tight. What we're gonna do here is foot flat, so your toes are pointing away from you. Keeping the heels up, don't let them tip out, keep them up. You're gonna sit back onto your feet like this. And keeping the feet flat, you slowly apply pressure and weight and try to relax. Now when you're sitting like this, you're gonna feel a stretch going down the front of your leg, right across your foot. Now if this feels really tight and uncomfortable, you can switch to one leg, sit on that side with the other leg in front. This lets you work on one side at a time, especially if one side is tighter than the other. Now to get the rocking aspect, you go from here to this. If you want to feel this stretch a bit more, all you do here is you put your hands flat on the floor. You now lift the legs off the floor. Now you can do two legs at the same time. You get the hips up and you get the knees relatively straight, toes flat on the floor, and you try to drop the heels as flat as you can down towards the floor. Now you can transition. You can go from this exercise to feet flat, stretch. 10 to 15 seconds, you come up, hands, toes up, and then rock back onto the ankles. This is where the name the rocking ankles exercise comes from. So you're dropping this down. This is stretching out the gastrocnemius, your Achilles, and a little bit of your soleus. Up onto the toes, knees down, feet flat, sit back onto the feet. This improves your dorsiflexion. Plantar flexion, dorsiflexion. You now have 3 exercises you can use to improve both movements here. There is so many more exercises you can choose from. These are my favorite 3. These have served me well, they serve my clients well, and I hope they serve you well too. If you would like 30 ways in 30 days to get stronger and improve your mobility and flexibility, check the link in the description. It's completely free.